3 years ago, my cousins and I went camping deep in the woods near Northern Oregon. There were 5 of us total: me, my younger brother Tyler, my cousins Mason and Brooke, and Brooke's boyfriend Eric. We picked a remote campground with no signal because Eric wanted the real wilderness experience. The first night felt normal. We cooked hot dogs over the fire, told dumb stories, and listened to the woods around us. But sometime after midnight, Tyler suddenly stopped talking and stared into the trees behind me. He quietly asked, "Do you guys see that?" At first I thought it was a tree trunk reflecting moonlight, but then it moved. About 40 feet away, standing between 2 trees, was this tall white figure. It looked human, but wrong. Too skinny, too pale. Its arms hung unusually low, almost to its knees, and it wasn't moving naturally. It just stood completely still, staring toward our campfire. Brooke nervously laughed and said it was probably a person messing with us, but nobody wanted to walk closer to find out. Eric yelled at it, telling it to leave. The thing slowly leaned sideways behind a tree, then disappeared. Not walked away, just vanished behind one tree. That was enough for Tyler. He wanted to leave immediately, but it was almost 1 a.m. and the roads were dangerous at night. So we decided to stay close together and keep the fire going. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to footsteps circling our tents. Slow footsteps. At first I thought Eric was outside, but then I heard him whisper from the tent beside ours, "Something's out there." The footsteps stopped directly behind my tent. Then came this awful sound, a wet clicking noise, almost like someone trying to imitate human speech without knowing how. Tyler started panicking beside me. I could literally hear him shaking. Then something brushed against the side of our tent. A long hand-shaped outline slowly dragged across the fabric. We stayed frozen for nearly an hour until sunrise. The second daylight hit the trees. We packed everything without speaking. While loading the car, Mason suddenly noticed footprints around camp. They looked almost human, except absurdly long and narrow. What scared me most was where they ended. The tracks stopped 10 feet from our tents in the middle of open dirt. No tracks leading away. Whatever stood outside our tents that night never walked back into the woods. Back in 2021, 7 of us rented a campsite near Black Pine Lake for a weekend fishing trip. It was me, my girlfriend Jenna, my best friend Cole, his brother Ryan, and 3 other friends from work. The first day was perfect. Fishing, music, beer, campfire, nothing unusual. Around sunset on the second night, 2 random guys walked into our campsite from the trail. They looked dirty, like they'd been hiking for days. One was tall with a shaved head, and the other had a gray hoodie with the hood pulled tight around his face. The bald guy smiled and asked if we had extra water because their truck supposedly broke down nearby. Cole gave them some bottled water and offered them food. They acted friendly enough, but something felt off immediately. They kept asking weird questions. "How many people are camping here? You guys staying all weekend?" Jenna quietly told me she didn't trust them. Eventually they left down the trail, but before disappearing, the guy in the hoodie stopped and stared at our tents for way too long. That night, we all stayed around the fire later than usual because nobody felt comfortable anymore. Around 2 a.m., we finally went to sleep. I woke up to Jenna gripping my arm hard. Someone was outside the tent. At first, I thought it was an animal until I heard whispering. It sounded like male voices. Then came the sound of zippers opening. Cole suddenly screamed from another tent. Everything exploded into chaos after that. Flashlights started moving through camp. Somebody ran between tents. Ryan burst out yelling that someone stole his backpack. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside and saw the 2 same men from earlier digging through our supplies. The bald guy spotted me instantly and rushed toward our tent. I slammed the zipper shut while Jenna called 911. Then I heard Cole yelling again, "He's got a knife!" For about 30 terrifying seconds, all we heard was running, shouting, and things being thrown around camp. Then headlights suddenly appeared from the road nearby. The robbers bolted straight into the woods. Police found one of them the next morning hiding near the lake with stolen wallets and phones stuffed into a duffel bag. The other guy disappeared completely. What still freaks me out is something the officer told us later. Apparently, multiple campers had reported those same 2 men over the previous month walking into campsites pretending to be stranded hikers. We almost invited them to sit by our fire. When I was 14, my family went camping in Montana with my Uncle Darren and his 2 kids. There were 8 of us altogether, spread across 3 tents near a heavily wooded riverbank. My uncle loved scary stories, so naturally we spent the first night around the fire talking about missing hikers and strange things people claimed to see in forests. Around midnight, my cousin Lily pointed toward the woods and asked why someone was standing out there. At first, nobody saw it. Then my uncle went completely silent. About 60 yards away, partially hidden behind the trees, stood this pale figure. It was tall and thin like a person, but unnaturally white against the darkness. It looked almost glowing. Nobody moved. The thing slowly took 1 step forward, then another. My aunt grabbed Lily and rushed her toward the tents while my dad started yelling at whatever it was. The figure immediately crouched down onto all 4s. That image still messes with me. It moved into the trees unbelievably fast after that, completely silent. None of us slept much that night. At around 4 a.m., my Uncle Darren woke everyone up in a panic. He claimed something had been walking around the tents for the last 20 minutes. We all listened carefully. Heavy footsteps nearby. Then silence. Then, from somewhere across the river, we heard what sounded like a woman screaming. Not yelling, screaming. My little brother started crying instantly. My dad grabbed the truck keys and said we were leaving right then, even before sunrise. While packing, my uncle suddenly froze, staring at the muddy ground near the fire pit. There were footprints all around camp. Human-shaped footprints, barefoot, but impossibly large. And every single print pointed toward the tents. Last summer, 4 of us went camping in the mountains of West Virginia for my friend Nate's birthday. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend away from phones and work. The group was just me, Nate, his girlfriend Sarah, and our friend Luis. We found a small clearing beside an old hiking trail about 2 miles from the nearest road. The place looked abandoned. Even the fire pit there was filled with leaves, like nobody had camped there in years. The first day was completely normal. We hiked, cooked burgers over the fire, and stayed up late telling stories while the woods got darker around us. At one point, Luis joked that the forest felt too quiet. And honestly, he was right. There were barely any insects or animal sounds after sunset. Around midnight, Sarah suddenly asked, "Do you guys hear whistling?" At first it was faint, a slow whistle somewhere deep in the trees, 3 short notes, then silence. A few minutes later it came again, closer this time. Nate whistled back jokingly, thinking it was another camper. The woods immediately went silent. Then from farther away to our left, the exact same whistle answered him. 3 notes. Luis laughed nervously and said maybe people were messing with us from another campsite, but there was something strange about the sound. It didn't echo naturally. It sounded almost perfect, like the same recording being replayed. Eventually, we put the fire out and headed into our tents. About an hour later, I woke up because I needed to use the bathroom. I checked my phone. 2:13 a.m. That's when I heard the whistling again. Right outside camp. Not deep in the woods anymore. Close. I slowly unzipped the tent and looked outside. The fire was dead, but moonlight barely lit the clearing. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed someone standing near the tree line, tall, completely still. I honestly thought it was Nate until I realized the figure was way too tall and thin. It appeared almost like it had no facial features. Then it whistled. The same 3 notes. But this time the sound came from directly in front of me. I froze. The thing tilted its head slightly like it was studying me. Then from somewhere behind our tents, the whistle answered back. There were 2 of them. I immediately zipped the tent shut and whispered for everyone to wake up. The second I said there were people outside, we started hearing footsteps circling the campsite. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Sarah started crying quietly while Nate grabbed the hatchet we used for firewood. Then came the worst part. One of the whistles sounded right beside our tent, not 10 feet away. Luis suddenly shouted, "Go!" And we all sprinted for the truck without even grabbing most of our gear. Not once looking back, we made it to the truck and sped down the mountain road half blind in the dark. The next morning, Nate wanted to go back for our equipment, but when we returned, almost everything was untouched. Except for one thing. Around the cold fire pit, pressed deep into the dirt, were dozens of barefoot prints, all facing toward the tents. Makes us think who or what was there with us that night, and how many of them were there.